Hey, Tube. This is a video. Essentially, it's just a screen video of Maui. So you can see where Lahaina is. Um, and we'll just show the whole island here. So essentially, the way maps are always, they're always in a north, south, east, west location. North being up, top of the screen, south, bottom of the screen. Uh, East is on the right, west is to the left. So Lahaina was in the west of Maui. Um, in one of my other videos, I mentioned that there was a spill. Turns out that it was an actual diesel spill, not oil spill, and it was on this mountain of Halikala. Um, there's a uh, military space program up there, and essentially what they did is they left a diesel tank running, um, and somehow it overflowed and it just kept spilling 700 gallons of diesel fuel down the mountain of Halikala. But as you see how far away from Lahaina that is, I don't think there's any way that it could have contributed to the fire. It's too far away. Um, so correcting myself on one of my videos, I just wanted to point that out once I did the research and found out about that spill. Going back to Lahaina, I also researched which way were the winds blowing that day. Um, and they were blowing south southeast. Um, so west would be, to the left of the island, east to the right of the island. So as you see Lahaina here, as we zoom in, and this I'm just using Google Earth, we'll try to see where the fire started. So you see all these structures destroyed. Again, being a fire investigator, and because they haven't said where the fire started, I'm trying to do my own investigating work. You can see this whole area by that parking lot all gone. Um, Excuse the flashing. I don't know what's causing that. Wasn't doing this before. Oh, I know why. Because I tapped on someplace. Let me untap or something. Yeah, I didn't try to do that either. So this is interesting. I wonder if we'll be able to see the fire damage. Let's get out of here and, like zoom in here and see if it will let us see. I didn't do this before. Yeah, so 3D tour is what we're doing now. It's just showing us that all these are, you know, decimated. So let's just get out of that. So I'm going to zoom back out, reorient. Um, so you can see that we're west, at the bottom it shows the coordinates and so on and so forth. I want to get the island back to the way that we need it for this investigation. So spinning it around, going back down to Lahaina. So I was trying to find the origin of the fire. If the fire is blowing southeast, that would be straight down and to the right. So, obviously the wind would have an impact on the fire. So let's see if we can see any structures that are burned. So all these structures here are burned. And if it's blowing southeast, that would mean that somewhere in this vicinity, the fire started. Looking up here, these structures are fine. So it would have to be below that area. Now you see all this dark brown area here. I tried to zoom in and look around. Kind of looks like some things are burned to ash, whatnot. It's hard to tell if those were structures or not, so I'm not 100% sure. Uh, but you see all that dark area there. I mean, it just carries on. So I don't know if that's all burned area or not. Again, it's hard to tell whether those were structures or not from this image. But if it was, it would kind of make sense that it came down in that direction. But the first set of houses that I see, below that dark area, they're all fine. And this is recent right now. These are all fine right here. So to me, it would show or say that it happened below that area. So as you see this next section of street right here, you start to see some houses that are burned, randomly. Some burned, some didn't. So we're going to follow that to the right and look what we, have here. So you get this tan area, this whole tan area here. Right to the left of it, all those houses right there are fine. So I don't know what this tan area is here. Again, if we go more to the right where it's really dark, can't tell if those are structures or not that are down to ash or whatever. It just looks very, all the land there looks really black if I zoom way out. That could be cloud, cloud cover, things like that. I'm just not 100% sure, and it's hard to tell. But we can start to see, again, where all that black area is, again, because the winds are blowing southeast, if this fire, this dark area right here, was actually fire, and all of this, up in here, and it traveled down, straight down, south, you would think that these houses right here would have, been involved, and they weren't. So why? Well, probably because the fire started, I don't want to disorient us, started somewhere, around this area, right in the center, somewhere in here. It seems like it, because you have all of this, the first set of structures right there burned and just kept going down, take almost in a straight line. You see the houses right above them, totally fine. Again, the wind is blowing southeast. So it got all these houses going, but not the ones right above them. And then all of a sudden it got those two that you see there, but didn't get the ones directly across from it. So I'm just going to follow all the way down until you see the road. And, that's the first line to me of this fire. And it had to have started somewhere in this location. Could have been anywhere in here. If all of that is burned, again, I don't know. It looks it from the image. And that would kind of make sense as we move, that whole area is darker. And certainly a different color than all of this area here, that tan area above, and so on. Now you have this dirt road here. Let's say where all the dark was burned. So it didn't cross the road because the wind's blowing southeast. But it could have, essentially what I'm trying to say is if that vegetation burned, what happens with the road is it runs out of fuel. So of course it's going to stop there. That is if the dark area was burned and the wind is blowing south, it's blowing down. So all of that area could be burned. Hard to tell. And you can see like major lines where, if that's the case, it stopped. Again, I don't know what this stuff is right here, but you can see how it kind of fizzled out. You can see, though, that it crossed the road here, again, assuming that's all burned area. So if that's the case, and all of this dark area is the burn pattern, you would think that it started somewhere in this area, because the wind's going to blow it down, not up, not north. So if that's the case, it's blowing it down. And if it did, why didn't all those structures burn? And they would have. And again, kind of looks like ash in this area here, whatever. A few cars there that look fine. It's just really hard to tell from this, but we're just trying to get an idea. So none of those houses burned right there. The first sign of houses burning is in this section here, and they're random. So let's assume, this brown area is where the fire started. Again, this area, don't know what this vegetation was or whatnot. Looks more dirt than anything. So a fire wouldn't do much damage in there. And again, here's where it first starts. And you can see this whole dark area here. If that got going from, more grass as it jumped these roads, see there's a dirt road. It could totally go across with the wind blowing and down. Again, if it started up there, coming down and going across, it certainly could do that. And you have all of this damage here. Again, you have some houses untouched, like these. Just totally, don't understand it myself. Again, being a firefighter and fire investigator. So just following this first block here, this one, again, the ones above, and even that one right there, this one right here, didn't even burn. So where did it start? Where was the first house ignited? Again, at the bottom of the screen, that's south. So, and it's moving southeast. So, if it was in this area here, could it get that house right there going? Sure. Could radiant heat make it cross the street as these two, this house here, this house is burning, and catch these? Sure, could. And this house right here just lucked out somehow, as did all the other ones above them. Again, the wind's blowing down. So for whatever reason, the radiant heat didn't catch any of the other houses above, but the wind blowing down, of course it did. Now you get this section here, these houses untouched. Why? Hard to tell. And, right below them, you have all these gone. So you can see this line, making a line. So if it started, in this dark area here and just started working its way across, you got another house here, untouched. But directly below, which is where the wind is blowing, totally decimating everything else. So just zooming out a little bit, you can see the pattern. And then some random structures, like in here, get untouched, but everything around them burning. It just doesn't make any sense. Again, you can have embers and stuff blowing in the wind from fires and landing on roofs and so on and so forth and starting other fires. That's absolutely happens. It's called a conflagration. And there's been many fires like that which have changed the way the fire department operates, and building constructions, and it's changed the equipment that we use, on and on and on. But this is essentially a conflagration. That's when you have so many things, so many other houses and so on burning, caused by, presumably, Originally, when conflagrations came out, it was caused by other structures burning. The radiant heat, the superheated gases traveling to other houses, impinging on them, and then you get what's called well, everything has an ignition temperature, so as that heat is just radiating on it, and the superheated gases are pushing against it, so on and so forth, things can reach their ignition temperature and just start. You also have, you know, embers and everything else, big pieces of material that are burning, flying over to other houses, and that's what causes a conflagration. And it just keeps on going from there unless you're able to stop it. Um, Again, without water, because the water was shut down and so on, how are you going to stop it? So if, let's say the fire did start in this darker area here, one of my biggest issues, and they did this after because there was some fires later and they were trying to prevent them from spreading. So this is something that all of us firefighters are taught. And you can essentially use heavy equipment and make roads, like these roads. You just bulldoze all the vegetation, and then the fire burns itself out. Once it runs out of fuel, the fire goes out. You also can do what's called like back burning. So in other words, it would be difficult in a situation like this if with the winds, but let's say you didn't have a major wind issue. You could make a road like this, and let's say the fire's burning south, which the wind was blowing south. You could make a road like that and prevent the fire from going. And what you would do is you would light right at the edge of the road on fire. And they use these like handheld things that just get the grass going or whatever. And so what happens is the fire starts to burn towards, you're burning the unburned fuel towards the fire. So essentially, once the fire meets the fire, it's burned all the fuel, fire goes out. Again, that's hard to do in a heavy wind situation, which, they've talked about 60 to 80 mile per hour winds. You certainly wouldn't want to you wouldn't want to try and use that tactic, because it could jump that road that you had there and get the other stuff going. So difficult situation, but you certainly could have tried to create, eliminate vegetation so that if it was just grass burning, it would stop once it met that bulldozed area. Again, moving quickly, so on and so forth, but they were able to do it the next day. There was a fire, and it was heading towards some other structures. I don't know exactly where it was. And that's the technique that they used. They bulldozed areas and cleared area so that the fire would burn itself out when it ran out of fuel. And that could have been done a long time ago as well, before this fire even started, knowing that all this vegetation was so dry. They certainly could have prepared for this a lot better by making these, large areas that the fire couldn't jump over, or also on nicer days, burn that fuel back, have these fires just burn towards each other and kill all that vegetation so it doesn't become an actual issue. They could have been doing that for a long time, knowing that how Maui's so dry now because, the water company was purchased and it's owned by like 3 entities or whatever. And that's what's drying out all the land, is they're using this water for other places like California and so on and so forth, like I said. So looking at this, again, knowing that it's burning southeast, zooming out so you can see again the whole island, southeast, so down and to the right. So if it started up in that darkened area up here, it's burning south and east, as you see. It's just, and again, you got random buildings that just don't get caught for whatever the reasons on fire, but you have a large amount that are, random building right there. Can't tell if that's still there or not. And so it's burning south. Now you got this area here very tall, hotelish looking building or whatever, unscathed. Could be built with materials that are better for handling heat and fire and so on and so forth. Nothing is impenetrable to fire, but there are building materials that are made that can deal with, that can survive. Clearly, all these other houses were not built of those materials. Again, I don't know what that specific building is. I have seen it in the videos unscathed. Again, that could happen just based on whatever building materials that they used. Um, but you see that it just continued to travel south and east. And when I say east, as we zoom out, you can see to the right. All those have caught, and then it just keeps going down. And I don't know what this is here, this building. Again, different building materials, whatever it is, unscathed. And you have a couple homes down here, whatever it is, can't tell. They look like they're still there. Like oceanfront properties still there. And that whole, whatever this is, area, I don't know if it's golf course or something like that, looks unscathed. But more to the east, well, those look unscathed. This whole area looks unscathed. That whole area does. Looks like it kind of stopped there, but what happened? You got all that distance, right, from all the fires there, and that whole area is unscathed. All those up there burned. Nothing here did, right? Nothing here did. All that looks totally fine. I'm trying to stay oriented here. But all of a sudden now, you got those going, right? But all the other buildings around, totally fine. And then you have all of this. So you have all this water area, right? You have a lock right there, total water. And that building is unscathed. Yet all of a sudden now you have all those go. And it's blowing southeast. How did that even happen? How do you have all of that distance and those buildings get going? And a few random ones in here. You notice those are fine. Specifically right here, totally fine. This one right here, totally fine. But all those are gone. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. Because you have this whole area right here, totally fine, except for a couple larger buildings, as you see, gone. Yet it didn't burn all the rest of it. And this whole area with parking lots and everything, fine. Above it, all fine. This building, totally fine. How did it jump this whole area here? Jumped all of this. Randomly caught these, but that's it in that area. Everything else was fine. Excuse me. Didn't touch any of this. All that's totally fine. Get all those trees totally fine. And then all of a sudden, you get all this destroyed. And then it skipped these again for whatever the reason and just kept burning. Skipped all these for whatever the reason. And, now we're going random. And then it just continued to burn. So it's like amazing to me. It skipped this whole block except for a couple buildings, right? And made it over here and then continued to come down. The Maui Education Center is still there, but all these other buildings in there, totally gone. You got a couple buildings here, totally gone, but all these up here, totally fine. Totally fine. So how does the fire get from here right? Literally, because obviously it started up there. How does it get from there? Skip over these whole areas here. Totally skip over. None of these houses are touched at all. And even the corner over here, not touched. So you're not gonna have radiant heat doing it. You're not gonna have convection doing it. It has to be embers and things like that causing it. But how does it skip? How do those embers get all the way over this building, everything else, skip this whole area here, except catch a couple buildings in the middle here, and then generate down to this area with all that land? I mean, think about that. All of that land from the Lahaina Judo Mission all the way up to whatever this road is, can't see. And you didn't even have those ones in the corner burn. Okay? Skipped all of this land and caught this stuff down here by the Buddha mission and so on and so forth. It doesn't make sense. And then it just starts, again, picking random houses to burn. This whole area here, except for those two buildings randomly, totally fine. And then it just continues on down. Getting all these on the edge here, burning all that, everything in here, Lahaina Surf, Education Center, all this stuff. Again, it's burning southeast, and that's the direction that it seems to be heading, but it's skipping things and like it's choosing what to burn. Now, obviously, you wouldn't burn a parking lot, so you have all that space before it can burn anything else, but it's blowing southeast. So, if you had all these going, this whole area, could embers and stuff land in this area? Sure, eventually. It's possible. That building's still there. This looks like a building, I'm not sure, still there. Totally skipped those and just continued on, and as we zoom out, you can see that it skipped this whole area, whatever this is, church and so on and so forth. It did get this thing, whatever that was. You want to talk about the blue or the colors or whatever that, people talk about. I don't know whether that's a thing or not. I'm a fireman. I don't know anything about, rays burning or microwaves or all this other stuff. But that whole area is unscathed, and then directly below it, all burned. This doesn't make sense to me. And, as we zoom out, most of these went, but none of these houses up here. Now that would make sense, right? Because it's burning southeast. But all of these here don't really make much sense to me, because if the fire started, again, up here where the dark is, yes, it could burn south. Now, if all this did burn, that was all grass, got in the air and so on and so forth, could it light things on fire like this? Yeah, it could. And then it would kind of make sense. But it doesn't make sense to skip all of these things in the middle. So many things were skipped. This whole Department of Motor Vehicles and so on and so forth skipped. This whole section of houses right here, totally skipped. This whole area here skipped. Jumped over all of that. Jumped over this section here, except for a couple buildings, and then caught and started, ravaging everything all over again. And this whole area here. Some of the houses saved, but that's it. So you can see that it didn't travel up. Again, that would be going against the wind. It continued down. Excuse me. And if we zoom in, all these gone. Again, southeast. And yeah, so there's the banyan tree right there, um, and that's Front Street, and that's where everybody was being blocked in by the police. Total disgrace. Should have never happened. And they were not allowing them to get to this highway. The only way out. Um, so again, banyan tree. See everything burned around it. I've been here myself. Stayed in Maui for 3 weeks. Love this entire area. Love Maui. Most beautiful place on earth. I still can't believe that all this is gone. And if you've been to Maui, then you know this is like the main place to go. Everybody goes, walks down there. It's beautiful. It's just incredible place. But you see that everything here destroyed, destroyed, destroyed. Um, Again, don't know what this brown area is here. Looks unscathed. Um, and again, southeast, and it just went all through this and just kept going and kept going until right about in here. You had some go, some didn't, and that's about the extent of the damage. So you see, and again, I looked over here, can't tell if those were structures or not. Um, don't appear to be. You have this structure here, totally fine. So this would, to me, make me feel like this area, did not burn. Again, I don't know for sure, but you can see the pattern. This whole area gone, whatever that was. Here's some, ball fields and so on. Of course, that's not going to burn. The Boys and Girls Club still there. It just, so much of it doesn't make any sense to me. The way that it burned. Again, the wind was blowing southeast, so it would make sense how it continued down that whole area, which would lead me again, like I said, to believe the fire started somewhere in this area here. It's the only thing that makes sense. And how did it burn sideways like that? If the wind is blowing southeast, I mean, I don't know. The only thing that would make sense is if it came from up in this area here. But how did it skip all of these and start to hit them here? How did it jump that whole row, all of those neighborhoods, and then start below them all? That's what doesn't make sense to me. To jump all that space and do that. Again, if it's blowing southeast, and let's say it started over here to this area right here, you're not going to burn this way, this direction. It's not going to happen because the wind's not going that way. It's blowing southeast, not southwest. So it doesn't feel like it started up in this section here by the tennis courts or whatever. In my opinion, just looking at all this damage, it could have started anywhere in here. And, the closer it got the grass burning to this area, could have got all those going. But when you have wind blowing straight down and to the right, that's what I mean. It doesn't make sense that all these burned. It would make sense if all of this neighborhood was burned, that it kept coming down, But all those houses, except for like right here, are fine. How did these specifically two random houses get hit with fire? It just doesn't make sense to me. Not with the way that the wind was blowing. But I just wanted everybody to see this. And again, I'm going to zoom out just so you can get a better idea what we're looking at. Again, south is at the bottom of the screen. East is where Hana is. West is where Lahaina is. And as I looked up, the winds were blowing southeast, so that would be straight down and to the right. And if we zoom in again, we'll see where the destruction first started. And it looks like in these areas here. Because you're not going to have this section start on fire, and with the winds blowing south, catch all that on fire. It's just not going to do that because the wind is blowing all the embers and everything else down, not up. So some of the first to go could have been these. And then it just continued to carry from there. And did it come from this area here? Hard to tell, but I would be taking samples in there and all that dark area and totally investigate it. Again, you can see there's a large area of dark, and I don't know if any of that burned or not. All I can go by is the houses that started to burn. If all this was on fire and it started to move down, if it started up here and kept burning the grass like this way, kind of followed the road, and you see where the road gets close to this section in here, winds blowing, whipping, whatever. Don't know what was in here that looks like all ash or whatever. And finally got these houses going. Kind of makes sense. Doesn't make sense that they would burn up like that. And certainly this direction, which would be west when the wind is blowing southeast. But that's what we have to look at. So essentially just, we've seen some flyovers, things like that. Eric West did a lot of good video with his drone. They won't let anybody fly through there now anymore. Obviously, they're trying to keep information from everybody. They call everybody a conspiracy theorist. They haven't been answering any questions anymore, so on and so forth. But it's easy to see, what's going on. Again, this is coming from a fire officer for 30 years, fire investigator, inspector, and I'm just trying to help figure out where the fire started, how did it spread, and so on. Again, I don't know if all that dark area was burned. Like I said, it would make sense that the fire went south and east. And again, it stopped somewhere right around here. Don't know if that burned or not. Doesn't look like it. So I would say the last structures are in there that burned. But you saw how it jumped over whole areas. If I can find them again. Yeah, like this area. Well, there was the area with the lock. That was before the banyan tree, I think. But there's the banyan tree. And, everything around that's burned except for behind it. Probably because the tree took a lot of the heat from everything on Front Street, all these buildings here. It's just a travesty. The whole thing to me is it's just surreal. It's unbelievable. Yeah, this area, this building here, totally fine. This one up there, totally fine. Get everything all around it gone. And had to jump that far distance to just keep houses going, so on and so forth. Yeah, it just doesn't make truly any sense to me. Let's trying to get back to that lock. Oh, here's the lock right here. So you get all those houses above again, and then this giant building here, whatever that is, and everything flies over it. Giant city block, and to the right of it, misses all this stuff, and then just starts picking up random houses again. Skips this whole area almost, except for 4 buildings, and then just carries on below. This is the most crazy to me. How can you go from all the way up there, skip over all of this, and then land over here. Again, the wind's blowing southeast. How does that even happen? It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't go from where that cutoff is, and you can even see those two structures right here, totally fine. These, totally fine. Jumps over all of this, that water area, all of that, and then all of a sudden picks up over here again. It doesn't make any sense to me. It can't burn to the left because the wind's not blowing that way. But here we are, missed all that area, and now the burn's going to continue going. Excuse me, skipped over this, whatever this is, and skipped over this, whoever's lucky house that is, and then just continued on down all the way to Front Street, and killed lots of people. This is the area where everybody was trapped. These are the cars still there. Just a disgrace to me. This is where people had to jump into the ocean just to survive because the police wouldn't let them through. Disgusting, ridiculous, and the fire just continued on down. And you had that whole parking lot area unscathed. A few random houses here and there unscathed, or businesses, whatever they are, and the fire just continued down. Followed the wind, which makes sense. Some things survived, some didn't. Yeah, and it's just, like I said, it's just devastating to me. Here's Front Street here, everything gone. How did it jump that giant area up above and continue to make it down here? It literally makes no sense to me. But that's what it did, for whatever the reason. And they don't want anybody in there to know what the reason is. I don't know what this is. If that's a house that survived because of the blue tennis court or whatever that is, if you believe in that whole radar stuff, everything around is totally gone except for that. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous to me. And none of these, just a few here burned, and then, supposedly it just stopped. Stopped following the direction that the wind was blowing, the entire time. When it, like I said, skipped the whole area. This whole area, just totally skipped it from all the way up here and caught down here, and then it just continued on, randomly skipping a few houses here and there also, by the way, but eventually caught on to the road that was necessary to burn and just continued on down and decimated Front Street. So this to me was shocking to see myself. I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I don't know why I didn't. I didn't even think that I'd be able to see this stuff. Like they would somehow block all this out so people couldn't see. But you see how high up, this fire got. And, the direction that it was burning. It just blows my mind. You have that whole area in here, again, unscathed. Except for this structure here, whatever that was. But this whole parking lot looks totally fine. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to share this. I'll have another video today of me talking about certain things, but I thought this was important to share. And yeah, so if you like the video, please rate, comment, subscribe. You've heard me say it before, it helps with the algorithm. I'm not trying to make any money on these videos. I'm just trying to help the people. So why I hope that you watch all the way through and stuff like that, because it helps with the algorithm, with which again, the algorithm just means that if you see it, more people may see it. Regardless whether they're subscribed to me or not, it helps more people see this type of information if they're interested in it. So I just wanted everybody to, have an idea. In my opinion, the fire had to start somewhere, could have been anywhere in this area up here, coming down to where I think it first made contact with the homes, in this section here. That's just a theory, based on what I researched, the way the winds were blowing, and so on. Again, I don't know what this vegetation is. I haven't researched that. So supposedly it looks like all grass, not even any trees, It's just a grass fire that took off. But like I said, it doesn't make sense to jump things and then pick up again west of where things were burning when the wind's not blowing that way, and then continue to carry on down. None of that makes sense to me. um, but that's what supposedly happened. So anyway, again, thanks for watching the video. If you made it this far, stay tuned for my other video that I'll be posting today. And have a great day, everybody. Thanks, YouTube.